Two common methods to know in InDesign include rotating and transforming objects. So why would we want to rotate objects or transform them? Well, there are many reasons, but one example would be, let's just say at the bottom here, we wanted these to have a bit less of an aligned look and more of informal look. So what you could do is up here on the top of the tools panel, the selection tool, if you hover over right off the corner, you can click and drag, and that will rotate elements, and if you hold shift it will constrain it to specific angles like 45 degrees, 90 degrees, and so on. That's one way to rotate elements in InDesign. Now another way to rotate elements is we have something selected here and then go to the rotate tool. If you click and hold onto the free transform tool and then click on the rotate tool, just press R on the keyboard and you can just click and drag wherever. As long as it's selected, it will rotate it. And notice though that it's rotating it on that axis on the left hand side right in the middle. If we don't want that, we can actually adjust it up here on the top, the control panel, where it says reference point. So if I click that middle area, now if I click and drag, it will rotate it along the middle there. So same thing goes for all 9 points there. So I could click and drag this, and notice I don't even have to get close to it. I could be way over here and click and drag as long as it's selected. Now another way to rotate elements, I'm going to click this third one here, is to use this up here where it says rotate 90 degrees clockwise, rotate 90 degrees counterclockwise. We could use that if that was the effect we wanted, or we could use this right here on the control panel. So I could type in, for example, 15 degrees, press enter, and then it rotates that exactly 15 degrees. So that's when we know a specific degree amount we want to rotate it. So I'm going to just make these overlap a little bit, and then there we go. So it's a more of an informal look depending on what we're trying to communicate. Now with the rotate tool, you can rotate not just photos but also, of course, shapes. So if we had a shape over here, and I'm just going to give it a little bit of color here, and I could just click and drag like so. What's pretty interesting though is I can actually take this reference point here, the axis on which it rotates, and just click and drag it around, and now it will rotate from there. So if I had a skinnier rectangle here, and I went to the rotate tool, and let's just say I brought it down here right on the edge, and then I press Alt on the PC or Option on the Mac and click it, we can actually set a specific angle here as well. So if we have something divisible by 360, for example, let's just say 15, and I click copy, and then we can go up to object, transform again, and that could go all the way around the edge. Now it's better to do this in Illustrator because there's a shortcut. We can do the transform each command, and we could create a pattern that goes all the way around instead of having to click over and over. But I'm just showing you the different ways we can rotate elements in InDesign. Now on that same rotate tool menu, we also have scale, which we can use to resize elements, and also shear, and then free transform. So if I selected something here, went to the free transform, it just resizes it, right? I don't have to hold control like I do with the selection tool to resize something. I can just click and drag, hold shift to maintain that same proportion, and then it resizes the image. So that's helpful. And we can also go to scale, and if we go click and drag, and notice it goes from the middle though. It still resizes it, and we can change that. See how I have the reference point on the bottom? That's why. So if I change the reference point to the top left, and I click and drag, notice now that top left stays there, and then the rest moves. Same thing if I did top right, click and drag, and then there we go. So that's helpful if you want to resize images slightly in InDesign. You don't want to have to go back to Photoshop and make a couple images smaller. We don't want to just crop out. We're actually wanting to resize some images. Instead of having to hold Control on the keyboard and then use a selection tool, that's another option. We can use the scale or the free transform tool. With the free transform tool, we can also hover off the edge and rotate as well. And then the shear tool kind of distorts images. It can make it look not as professional unless you're going for some kind of special effect where they look like photos that we have on a table or something. We can use it not just for photos but also graphics if you're creating a specific shape, we can use these tools as well. Now finally, we can also go to Window, Object, and Layout. And earlier we used the Align panel and the Pathfinder panel, but there's also the Transform panel here. And it has some of the same controls that we see up on the Control panel. So we can scale and resize elements and rotate them and change their position on the page as well. So if I change that, it changes it according to wherever our reference point is. So that's how we rotate and also transform objects in InDesign. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next lesson.